The worst regret isn't buying the wrong gun. It's realizing you believe the hype. This year, I watched shooters drop cash on pistols with 5-star reviews and all-star reputations, only to get burned in ways nobody's willing to admit. 2026 is already littered with best picks that barely make it out of the safe. Want proof? Half the guns in this video are still being praised on every forum, while real owners are whispering the ugly truth. These pistols let us down. Here's what nobody tells you. Being overrated in 2026 doesn't mean bad on paper. It means trusted names, failing at the range, expensive mistakes you can't return, and the sharp sting when a so-called legend jams at the worst possible time. Stick with me because I'm calling out every sacred cow on the list. And before we're done, I'll show you the one bulletproof pick that nearly cost me everything this... You'd think by now I'd know better than to trust a gun just because it won every Best of 2025 award. The Walther PDP was everywhere last year. Magazine covers, shop displays, YouTube lists, calling it the safest bet for your next upgrade. You couldn't walk into a store in December without someone mentioning its match-grade trigger or the optics-ready slide like it was gospel. Even I started to believe it'd be the one that finally delivered something new. But now it's 2026, and the truth is showing up fast. Just this week, I watched a guy at my local range break in his brand new PDP, holiday buy. Still had that new gun smell. He ran a couple of mags, checked the slide, adjusted his grip, but you could tell he wasn't impressed. By the end of the session, he just shrugged and said, "Feels fine, but nothing special. I expected more." The next morning, that same PDP was already sitting in the shop's trade-in case. Barely used, already given up on. The numbers all sounded perfect in 2025, but here in January, the PDP just feels cold. Not bad, not broken, just another gun that was easier to praise in ads than to keep after the first range trip of the year. If you're still chasing last year's hype, maybe wait. There's more disappointment where that came from. You see it every year. Guys calling themselves collectors, always chasing the next holy grail. With the Shadow 2 Compact, I watched that circus unfold up close. Dealers were getting calls before they even opened. Friends of friends paid over retail just for the brag. My group chat lit up with photos of blue CZ boxes. Everyone acting like they just landed a piece of gun history. But the real story comes out later. Ask around quietly, and you'll find more than a few who never actually shot theirs. They'll talk about saving it, keeping it mint, but really it's just sitting in a safe, untouched since the honeymoon wore off. I've had more than one guy try to offer me theirs off the record, always with some excuse about making room or not needing two. Nobody says the obvious. They bought for the flex, not the firing line, and now it's just expensive shelf space. That's the thing with overrated collector's items. The chase feels good, but actually owning one never fills the gap. If you think the next pick isn't guilty of the same kind of regret, keep watching. I spend a lot of time in gun shops around my town, probably more than I should. The counter guys know me as the one always after what's new, what's moving, what's collecting dust. If there's a gun that always confuses shoppers and staff here, it's the SIG P320. Every store has a wall of variants. X-Carry, Compact, Legion, AXG, whatever new flavor just dropped. Even the staff struggle to keep them straight. Last week, I bumped into a regular debating two different P320, grilling the staff. What's actually different here? The answers were never the same. I've met guys who trade up, swap modules, change frames, then end up right back where they started, never really sure if it was an upgrade or just another version of confusion. There's always some hesitation when the old drop safety recall or dead trigger gets mentioned, though most people just wave it off as fixed. But here's the truth. When a pistol needs this much explaining, comes in a dozen models, and still leaves shooters doubting their pick, is it really a legend? Stick around. The next gun on this list doesn't even give you that many choices to get it wrong. If you ask me which pistol gets slapped with the overrated label every year and still gets more love than anything else, it's the Glock 19 Gen 5. But here's where I'll be honest, my own opinion changes with the weather. Sometimes I roll my eyes at how many are on the shelf. Sometimes I find myself missing the one I sold. What nobody talks about is the weird kind of regret the Glock gives you. Not "this gun failed me" regret, but that nagging itch. Did I buy into the hype, or am I just too stubborn to walk away? I've lost count of the times I've swapped the 19 for something flashier, only to wish I hadn't, then grabbed another out of spite. It's the only pistol that makes you argue with yourself in the parking lot after a trade. That's the real Glock 19 effect. Never disappointing enough to quit, never perfect enough to brag. If you're new, you buy it for the name. If you're experienced, you probably still own one, even if you won't admit it. Overrated? Maybe. But somehow it keeps ending up in the rotation. And that's a different kind of problem than any other pistol on this list. A few days after Christmas, my cousin's grandson came out to the farmhouse, all excited about buying his first real pistol. He's still a noob, just getting comfortable behind the sights, but someone at the range had told him the Beretta 92 FS was the perfect starter gun. The moment I heard that, my blood boiled. How can anyone in their right mind push the 92 FS on a beginner? That's exactly why I call this pistol overrated. The reputation is bulletproof. Movie legend, military history, and everyone wants to hold the same model they saw on the big screen. But beginners never hear about the drawbacks. The 92 FS is oversized, awkward for small hands, and that first double action trigger pull feels like wrestling a brick, especially when you're new. Learning to shoot on this all-metal beast usually means frustration and bad habits, not progress. I told him the truth. The 92 FS is a fine gun once you've mastered the basics. But for a first-timer, it's more obstacle than asset. When you let the legend pick your pistol, you end up chasing hype instead of skills. That's how the most overrated picks keep finding new owners. FN doesn't hold back when it comes to selling the 509 Tactical. Their marketing crew, everyone from slick ad writers to former military consultants, wants you to picture this pistol riding on a war belt, sandblasted in some far-off desert. Mission ready. All the language is battle-proven, military-tested, built for the harshest fight. Makes for a great ad, but most shooters in my world don't need a pistol that can survive a helicopter crash. What actually matters for most of us? Reliability, good ergonomics, something you enjoy shooting at the range or trust at home. The 509 Tactical comes loaded with features: threaded barrel, optic cut, tall sights. But I'll be real, half those upgrades barely get used. For a lot of civilian shooters, you end up paying for a spec sheet, not real-world benefit. That's where the overrated tag sticks. Even with all that, I keep the 509 Tactical in my own rotation. I like the way it runs, and it's built like a tank. Maybe I've bought into the marketing more than I'd like to admit, or maybe this one just fits what I want in a pistol. But for every battle-proven claim out there, there's a pistol right behind it that barely survives a day at the range. If you're ready to see where the legend really falls apart, keep watching. Ask around and the Taurus G3C is always getting crowned the king of budget pistols. Best starter, easy to shoot, great value. Hey, that's what everyone says. I've owned one, and sure, for the price, it does the job on the range. But if you're choosing to buy a Taurus G3C in 2026, here's what you really need to know. The after-sales support can turn your deal into a headache fast. Mine jammed up twice, both times still under warranty. I did what anyone would, opened a support ticket, figured I'd get it sorted. Instead, I got strung along with promises and delays. Parts are coming. Just wait a little longer. Not once did they say they wouldn't help, but nothing ever actually happened. Weeks went by, tickets still open, and I finally just fixed it myself. I don't have all year to chase down a repair that never lands. That's why the praise for the G3C is overrated. Any budget pistol's only as good as the help you get when it breaks. And if you think spending a little more guarantees peace of mind, wait till you see how the next upgrade on this list lets shooters down in its own way. Ever feel the pressure to love a gun just because the name's famous? That's the Remington RP9. When it launched, Remington hyped it as their big shot at Glock and SIG. Ads everywhere, all the right specs, supposed to be a slam dunk. But the moment you handle one, the cracks show up. The grip is full size and awkward for smaller hands. Never as natural as the competition. The trigger is nothing special. Heavier and less crisp than what you'd expect for the price. And if you want to customize, forget it. Holsters, sights, upgrades barely exist for this gun. I'll admit my RP9 never jammed, but I almost never shoot it either. When I check Quora or forums, plenty of owners complain about jams and misfeeds. Maybe I just got lucky, or maybe it's so unremarkable I never used it enough to break. This is what makes the RP9 so overrated. The name brings a lot of hope, but the experience never lives up to it. All that marketing and legacy, but in the end, it's just another safe queen. For the next one, we're not even dealing with big promises. We're dealing with a reputation built on wishful thinking. You couldn't avoid the Shield over the last decade, even if you tried. Ads, gun shops, YouTube reviews, every corner of the shooting world just kept pushing it as the carry pistol. I've lost track of how many new shooters I've seen grab a Shield, because that's what everyone around them said to buy. It's the classic case of a gun getting its reputation from marketing and influencer noise, not from actually moving the needle. The Shield was never bad, but with all the hype, it barely had to be good. Most folks just accepted it as the standard, so much that it became the default carry for a whole generation. Problem is, when something's everywhere, it stops standing out. The Shield's grip, capacity, and shootability are just average now. Nothing you can't beat with the latest options. I get why people still trust it, and I'll admit, I bought into the hype too. But these days, picking a Shield feels more like following the crowd than leading it. Ready to see the most overrated pick of all. The number one on this list takes hype to a whole new level. After years of hearing the same advice, lists, shops, everyone nodding at the VP9, I finally just bought it. I figured, all right, let's see. On paper, it's all there. The grip, the trigger, reliability. Yeah, it checks all the boxes. You're told it's the smart move. But with every range trip, I kept waiting for a reason to care. The gun did everything right. It never messed up, never made me mad, but it never did anything else either. No stories came from owning it. Can't remember ever telling a friend, you've got to try this. Didn't love it, didn't hate it, just nothing. Sometimes I'd pick it up out of habit, put it back, grab something with a little more character. Even if it wasn't as perfect, I never sold it. Didn't feel like I needed to. But if I'm honest, it's the only gun I own that just sort of disappeared. After all the hype, all the advice, all those years of being told it was the safe choice, this is the one that finally made me stop trusting lists. Everyone knows the Desert Eagle. It's a legend before you ever see one in real life. Movies, video games, posters. If a gun could win an Oscar for Best Supporting Role, this would be it. The shape, the name, the idea of it, it all sticks with you long before you ever hold one. But that's just it. The Desert Eagle sells the fantasy, not the reality. Ask around and you'll find way more people talking about it than actually living with one. It's something to admire on the wall or show off to friends, but it's rare to meet anyone who calls it their favorite to shoot. Most folks keep it as a conversation piece, maybe a dream gun, but not something they'd trust for anything practical. The myth is bigger than the experience. That's why it lands as a bonus. Not because it's bad, not because it failed, but because it feels more at home in a story than in a safe. If you've ever wanted one, you're not alone. Sometimes the fantasy is what sells best. Sometimes a gun's reputation comes from what it survives, not what it achieves. The High Point C9 has always been that kind of story. It shows up when budgets are tight, when options are few, or when someone just needs something, anything that goes bang. You hear people defend it with a kind of weary pride. It works. But dig into that, and you realize what they're really saying is, it didn't fail me completely. The bar isn't excellence. The bar is survival. If it fires, it passes. That's powerful in its own way, but it's also where the legend gets bigger than the reality. Nobody buys a high-point C9 hoping to fall in love with it. It's not admired, it's tolerated. Over time, just getting by can start to sound like praise. The high point filled a gap. And for some folks, it still does. But that doesn't make it something to celebrate. Sometimes the most talked about gun is the one you only choose when there's nothing left. Wait until you see what made the next bonus list. Last year, right in the thick of summer, I ended up at a training session outside my town, just watching, no shooting, soaking in the atmosphere. There were CZ Shadow 2s lined up, a couple of Beretta 92 X performances, and a few guys running Canik TP9 SFX pistols. Serious shooters, high-end hardware. The Beretta 92 X performance stood out before a single round was fired. Shiny, heavy, with the kind of presence that draws every eye at the bench. But as the drill started, the difference was obvious. The Shadow and Canik shooters were all rhythm. Mag after mag, not missing a beat. With the Beretta, I saw more downtime than action. Wipe downs between strings, double-checking sights, pausing to clear a stovepipe, then more cleaning. Even the guys running them looked distracted, never really in the groove. It's not that the 92 X Performance is a bad gun, far from it. But watching from the sidelines, it was clear. The more impressive it looked, the more it seemed to slow things down. Sometimes the gun that turns heads on the bench is the first one you're happy to set down when the real shooting begins. There was a time when the Springfield XD was everywhere. Shop counters, gun belts, range bags. If you asked for a safe recommendation, the XD was the answer nobody questioned. It fit, it worked, and it felt like the default pick for years. But nothing dramatic changed. There wasn't a big failure, no scandal, no mass disappointment. The XD just drifted. One season, it started showing up less at the range. A few months later, you stopped hearing it in conversations. New shooters stopped mentioning it. Old shooters moved on to something else. It faded quietly, with no one really noticing when it happened. That's what makes it overrated now. The reputation lingered long after the relevance was gone. People still talk about the XD like it's a current contender, but almost nobody reaches for one anymore. It didn't do anything wrong. It just stopped being chosen. And honestly, nobody really noticed when it happened. That's the real price of believing the 2026 hype. Some guns live on reputation, but it's your money, and sometimes your neck, on the line when they fall short. If you recognized a favorite here, don't take it personal. Take it as a wake-up call. The market never stops selling you dreams, and next year's must-have for 2027 is already being crowned. Tell me your biggest letdown of 2026, the gun you thought would change everything, but left you regretting the day you bought it. Don't hold back. I want the truth, not another sales pitch. And if you're still hanging on to something that disappointed you, you're not alone. I've got one in my safe I still can't forgive myself for picking up this year, but that's another story. I'm Steve. See you in the next video if you're still willing to trust one more list.